Because let's face it, we truly live in a digital age. Everything we do depends on this digital technology that underlies the very fabric of what we do personally and professionally. We look at apps on our iPhones that our banks give to us. We have to trust that the digits that we're seeing actually mean something, actually means that there's something actually there. At Palo Alto Networks, last year, we put a software stack in every one of 9,600 next generation war vehicles, Humvees, tanks, Jeeps, that the men and women in our Department of Defense in the US used in the field of battle, really to change the dynamics of communications between the men and women that are putting themselves in harm's way to serve our country and the people back in Command Central. And we've got to trust that it actually works. The stakes are very high, and it's every one of us here in this room's job to make sure that it actually works, to preserve that trust. Because we've all been there when it doesn't work, like this holy shit moment, right? Despite all our best efforts, we've all been there. We know it's just not happening, it's not working. Something very different has got to be done. We've got to ask ourselves, others ask us, the suits and the board, are we making progress or are we going backwards? We've worked so hard, we've spent so much money, we've thrown people and a conga line of devices behind that old stateful inspection firewall. You guys don't have any stateful inspection firewalls here, do you? If you do, please leave the room. But do we fundamentally believe that we are going about this in the right way? Are we using the right people? Do we have the right strategies and technologies? There's definitely doubt out there. And progress is clearly elusive. There's just a lack of confidence that you can feel. And my goodness, we continue to read about the breaches. Read about them here in Canada, certainly read about them in the US. We watch them on the 6 o'clock news. And this, I would submit, is a global problem. I travel around the world and I meet with people in Europe and across Asia-Pac and Japan, and we're all in this together. We're all working together. In 2016, we saw a 40% rise in successful breaches. And the consequences are massive. They're much bigger than we think. We see a breakdown in that trust that's so very important in this digital age. And that breakdown results in real productivity issues. Productivity that can translate into dollars, lost dollars. And this is the productivity that our companies, our shareholders, our governments, heck, our economies depend on. Advance, please. Thank you. And it's a complex issue, and I submit that this complexity is not getting any easier. Because we're throwing a lot of things at this problem. We're seeing DevOps move into the cloud. We're seeing IoT devices, SCADA devices, just proliferating IP addresses everywhere in this Internet of Things. Our customers are moving applications to SaaS providers, to public cloud providers, and we really need to get our act together. I think we're one behind, folks, on the DVR. So if you think about this, we've been feeling our way around this problem blindfolded for just too long. If you think about the ancient fable of the 6 men that have encountered an animal that they've never seen before, and they're blindfolded trying to feel their way around this animal. Is it malware? Is it phishing? Is it state-sponsored? Is it criminal behavior? And what is the problem? Well, I'd submit that it's a math problem, and we're losing. We're losing this battle because the math is stacked against each and every one of us here in this room and around the world. I can boil it down to you with a few fundamentals. The math of dramatic declines in the cost of compute. The harsh reality that data is everywhere and shockingly accessible. Access to the internet is basically free, and I would submit, ladies and gentlemen, that this is the new normal. This will continue. Because we're fighting a highly automated adversary, one that we just can't continue to throw people at. This also will continue. And of course, innovation is happening at such rapid rates. This also, I guarantee you, will continue. So why is it broken? Well, my opinion is that no one company can do all of this. We've seen this movie before. That didn't work out well for that company, their shareholders. Didn't work out well for you customers. This is not just a one company problem. Because all of this innovation has to be able to be consumed. This is what's fundamentally wrong. And that's what I want to talk a lot about this morning. You're going to hear Nir after me and Lee after him talk about this morning, because this has to happen. We've got to make this consumption easier to consume the innovation that our industry is cranking out. So let me double click on this part, because I think this is pretty important. Innovators have a really tough time getting to the market. If you really think about it, two guys and a three-legged dog come up with a great idea. They go find a rich guy like Chad Kinselberg, and he funds them for some seed money, and that might take a year. Then they hack together something. They go out to Sand Hill Road. They give away 75% of their business to get funded in a venture round. That might take another year. And then they hack together something, and they go find some friendly customers. And they do some testing with those customers. And they finally get it to work. This takes years to get something that actually works in a production environment. It's just inefficient, and it just doesn't work. And if you looked at the companies that were at RSA last year, over 1,000 security companies, and how many of those companies do you think are going to be here in 5 years from now? I would submit not very many. We've got a very expensive and very inefficient model, and worst of all, you, our customers, are caught in the middle, and it's just not working. And if the innovators do make it to the market, it's very difficult to consume this. You've got to buy more boxes, more software licenses. You've got to manage dozens of vendors, dozens of panes of glass, hundreds of contracts perhaps. It's just very, very difficult. And some people try to throw resources at this problem. It's hard to do if you can find the resources. I read a research report last week that by the year 2021, there'll be 3.5 million open cyber positions. So I think we're all in the right business for job stability. There's just too many moving parts, which is why we've seen a dramatic move to platforms. Now this, in theory, makes sense. Proving it out is a little more difficult. But platforms have to continue to evolve. And I really want to spend a bit of time on this slide because clearly we need to have more and more innovation that's got to be easy to be consumed. And we're working on that. We got to definitely share a lot more. It was my pleasure yesterday to spend time with the Cyber Threat Alliance. This is a nonprofit threat consortium that donates every single day the worst of the worst malware evidence that companies in our industry have banded together. We're really proud to have been one of the founding members of this Cyber Threat Alliance. So Michael Daniel, the new president, we announced back at RSA. We also were proud to announce that finally Cisco and Checkpoint joined this. This is great. This is a very good step, but we have to continue. We got to find ways to share with government. And I get the privilege of traveling around the world, being the token non-American on the executive team, talking to governments across the world about who are much more open to engaging with Palo Alto Networks as a thought leader in security to talk about information sharing. And of course, we've got to drive towards much more automation because, as I said, we can't throw people at this problem. We've got to automate as much as we can so that we can save the toughest problems to get human intervention involved when we get them. And clearly, all of you in this room are moving to much more software form factors as you move applications into public SaaS environments, as you move application into public cloud and private cloud for that matter. You need software form factors that can deliver this innovation. That's pretty important as well, because that'll make things a lot easier to consume, a lot easier to deploy and manage. And finally, we've got to provide you with the flexibility on how to pay for this. I had an interesting meeting yesterday with the folks at Telstra who really have some really innovative ideas about how they're going to deliver technology in a very consumable way to the customers down in Australia and New Zealand. So this is a step in the right direction. We've got to evolve to this model. So this new model is, the latest in a decade of evolutions, let's just call them, of these platforms. The way I see it, over the last decade, there's been 3 evolutions, right? The first evolution was when Nir Zuck, straddled up to Silicon Valley 11 years ago to start Palo Alto Networks. Maybe I should call it a revolution, because boy, did he ever disrupt our space. We were the first company to deliver a unified platform that could deliver consistent security, making users and applications everywhere much more visible, much more actionable, from mobile devices to the core, to the data center and out around the perimeter. It was revolutionary of its time. We developed a single pass engine that allowed this platform to consolidate multiple security elements, things like IPSs, web gateways, APT devices, IDSs, SSL VPNs, replacing that conga line of devices that would follow us around. So the Nir and Lee team decided to deliver a lot of this functionality from the cloud instead of from disconnected devices. This creates leverage from a large and growing customer base, be able to increase our ability to take the ever-attacking threat vectors and turn unknown bad things into known bad things. For patient 0, we can containerize that. For every other one of our customers, we can protect and prevent that 0-day from happening. And finally, in this revolution, we've seen just staggering adoption. We have 40,000 customers around the world now. Clearly, this success has showed us that to better protect you, our customers, we had to expand these capabilities to other parts of the infrastructure to break the attack lifecycle. So the second evolution enabled that expansion. We heard loud and clear from you, our customers, that we needed to expand our platform to the very geography where a lot of these attacks were being detonated, to the endpoint, to ATM devices, to gas pumps, to servers and laptops and mobile devices. And it was quite revolutionary when we went out and looked at all the sort of next generation endpoint players out there, did due diligence on a few of them, but we really found the best and the brightest over in Tel Aviv, Israel, a company called Cyvera that we acquired. We worked on integration with our cloud services, with Wildfire, and then we productized as Traps. And we just saw this legacy antivirus space go down to a commodity level, where it became very, very difficult to find unknown bad things. Our strategy was to integrate Traps into our cloud services, and by golly, today, this is still a very unique approach. And as more and more customers consolidated more and more legacy point products to our platform, it became clear that you customers were moving applications to public cloud and to SaaS providers like Azure and AWS, who will join me here up on the stage in a few moments, at a very, very high rate. Our solution was a multi-cloud approach that allowed you to choose which SaaS application and which public cloud instance you wanted to secure. Here, our key value propositions without question is flexibility and consistency, because you deserve to be able to enforce the exact same policies that you enforce on-prem in public cloud and in SaaS environments. You have to be able to fight the good fight. And finally, the third evolution was seeing the threat intelligence cloud grow by leaps and bounds, trillions of artifacts today, as we ingest a lot more data into our data centers, things like log data and telemetry. Oh, geez, Lee, I just pre-announced a service. Well, Lee's going to tell you a lot more about this exciting logging service that we're going to announce today. But this way, we're going to be able to deliver even more compute power to resolve against more and more artifacts, to be able to deliver much more actionable security. Very, very exciting to get this kind of context and this kind of volume of artifacts. As we ingest this data, which will grow to hundreds of petabytes, we wondered, why not open this up to anyone? Why not? What if any big data company or any security company could build an application that could sit on top of all of this data, this very rich and very contextual data? Well, today, I'm proud to announce that we're doing just that. We're calling it our Application Framework and API Services. This framework will allow entrepreneurs anywhere around the world, innovators, technology companies, even customers, to be able to develop highly innovative applications that will sit on top of the best and the most contextual data source in the world. We'll expose APIs, very rich APIs that will allow anyone to resolve against this data. Palo Alto Networks, once again, is changing the dynamics of this industry. Our existing services, threat prevention, URL filtering, wildfire, will be so much better off with this extra, mass amounts of data and the extra context. Ready-to-go apps today, of course, Autofocus, our threat hunting tool, and MindMeld, the open source tool that we released last year for threat syndication. We exposed this to the open source community, and we've seen rapid adoption already. And these will sit right on top of this API framework. And in a revolutionary way, will allow a new generation of applications to be delivered and consumed in a much more cost-effective manner than ever before. And new applications like LightCyber, the most recent acquisition that we made, behavioral analytics, will be able to see tons more data to be able to deliver much more actionable security. But importantly, will also enable third-party applications, even your own security applications. Maybe you want to develop an app that will be able to measure your KPIs and give you a dashboard view of that. There's all kinds of ways that customers, and you'll hear about this from Lee when he'll announce, customers like Schlumberger have already built apps that are resolving against this framework. So this is really going to dynamically change how security gets procured and how security gets consumed in a much simpler, much faster way that I think is going to be very important, because smart innovators are going to write to the platform. They're going to do it in a lot easier way. They'll be able to leverage existing sensors and enforcement points that they have at the application, at the sort of architecture layer, with much more actionable automation, and finally make our fight against the bad guys a more even one. So instead of trying to integrate dozens of vendors with dozens of technologies, dozens of panes of glass, customers can use hundreds of innovative vendors at far less cost with much less complexity. And as I stand here today, humbly, world-class humble, if I might say, that this will change everything in our industry. I really do think it will. How innovation gets consumed more quickly, how the complexity of security gets abstracted by this application framework. I submit to you that there's only one company in our industry that can pull this off, and that company is Palo Alto Networks. Things will never be the same again. So, why is this possible today, right now? Because technology never stands still. The technological advances in compute power and elastic scale have made this possible. They're here today. They're here right now. What I'm thinking about, ladies and gentlemen, is not theoretical. You're going to hear specific details on this with dates from Nir and Lee following me. So what do you guys think? Yeah? Good. Well, this is a very big step, and from a company that likes to take very big steps, we can't do anything without the support of our customers. None of us would be here. None of this would be here without our customers. So we're very, very grateful for those relationships, and we expect that they'll continue to be good and get better in the future. So, of course, this is not just us, and now I'm going to pivot really to something completely separate, over to public cloud, because boy, oh boy, in the last year, since our last Ignite, we've just seen an accelerated pace and movement to public cloud. The leaders in this space understand some of the concept that I mentioned before very, very clearly, how to harness this technology to drive this new evolution. Now, a lot of this has to do with public cloud for sure. A lot of this has to do with analytics. So, similarly, as we see more apps move to this public cloud, scale and flexibility will be the key. To explain more, I'd like to invite a couple of our very good partners up here to stage to talk about what they're doing and how this is going to help their evolution in public cloud go very quickly. And with that, I'd like to invite Ann Johnson, Azure, Microsoft's VP of cybersecurity. Ann, would you please come on stage? Big round of applause. Welcome.
Good morning, Mark. Great to see you. Great to be here.
Thank you so much for coming, Ann. This is great. I'd love to get you to tell the audience here. You've got probably a lot of Microsoft customers. I'm guessing about 3,500.
We hope so.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do at Azure and Microsoft and what you've done before.
Sure. So, I don't speak Canadian, though.
Ah.
Most Americans will tell you I barely speak English because I'm from New York, but I'll try,
C'est
okay?
difficile.
I'll really try. But anyway, I have been with Microsoft a couple of years. I've been in security for the past 20 years, was at a company called RSA Security for a long time, was at Qualys, did a startup, and then found my way to Microsoft. So I run our enterprise business all up, and part of that is our enterprise cybersecurity business.
Yeah, so if I think about, how much security means to our customers, maybe you can tell us a little bit about what security means to Azure and your customers.
Sure. So, as we think about customers on their journey to the cloud and going to Azure, they're going typically to digitally transform their business. They want to empower their employees. They want to go to new markets. They want to bring new products to market. They can't do that and be insecure, right? I always say that nobody contemplates digital transformation unless they think about security. They're not going to go expand their business unless they think about security. It's like the prerequisite of actually going to the cloud, going to public cloud, and accelerating their digital transformation.
Yeah, sometimes we find that customers think, well, heck, I'm not good at this stuff. I'm just going to let Azure take care of it. And it really doesn't work that way, does it?
Well, it's a shared responsibility, right? And what we find is a lot of our customers in that journey, they want to maintain the same controls. They want to maintain the same policies. They don't want to actually have to change that when they go from on-prem into the cloud. The good news is with our Palo Alto partnership, you actually allow them to think about that journey in that way, whether they want to keep some assets on-prem, they want to go to a hybrid cloud. Sure, we'd love them all to be in Azure. It's probably not a reality, right? And then whether they go to Azure, they can actually have the same policies, the same controls, and Palo Alto allows them to do that across the space that you play in.
Yeah, for us and for our customers, the key is this consistency that you talk about, and that really does make a big difference.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so for my final question, Ann, maybe you can tell me a little bit about how you think this relationship with Palo Alto is important to Microsoft.
It's incredibly important to Microsoft. I mentioned to you earlier, and I know you were a little almost surprised to hear that Palo Alto is our #1 ISV co-sell partner. Wow. What that means is in all of Azure. So you think about all of our Azure partners, right, in security, outside of security, Palo Alto actually holds that #1 spot. What that tells me is a couple things. #1, it validates how important security is to our customers as they move to the cloud. It validates the consistency that they need as they actually make that transition to the cloud, and it validates your technology and actually empowering and enable Azure as their chosen cloud platform.
Absolutely. I was mentioning to you, I spent all day Friday up in Redmond visiting with folks from product management, product marketing, and then sales leaders. Mm-hmm. I was just blown away at the engagement level of the Microsoft team, just across the board with regards to this partnership. It really does feel like it's an important partnership for us, and I really look forward to helping secure our customers' workloads as they pile into Azure in the future.
Excellent. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate the
really
invitation.
Appreciate it, Ann.
Have a great conference.
All right, cheers. Ann Johnson. And now I'd like to welcome Dave McCann up here on the stage. Dave is the VP of Engineering for AWS Marketplace and Catalog. Dave, come on down. All right. How you doing, mate? Cheers.
Morning.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
So we had to keep you guys in separate cages. Did that work out okay?
Works out great.
The little watering tray was fine?
Separation of responsibilities.
Fantastic, yeah. Now, I can hear you've got, it's a Seattle accent, is it?
I like to think that Canadians are really just Scottish people with land. In London, I'm unintelligible, and in America, I'm liked, but in Canada, they understand me.
Exactly. Well, hey, man, I certainly understand you. So it's great to have you here today. Maybe you can tell us a bit about yourself and what you do at AWS.
Sure, thank you. So, first of all, it's a privilege to be here, so thank you very much for the partnership and the invitation. I've been in the States, despite the accent, I've been in the States 29 years. I did actually run a development center in Toronto for a couple of years, which was very interesting, because I learned a lot about Canada there. And I've journeyed up and down the West Coast, involved in enterprise software since 1982. And now I have the privilege and opportunity to be working for AWS.
Yeah.
Been there about just under 3 years. And now we have over 90 services on AWS that we call Amazon Web Services. And when I joined 2 years ago, we had 35.
Wow.
So we've essentially added a whole bunch of services in 2.5 years. Of those 2 services, I'm running one called Marketplace and one called Service Catalog. They're both essentially a data store of content, and we are the app store for everybody in this audience. And we're really becoming your partner as the software publishing platform. And in the library of software that we distribute and stand up worldwide, Palo Alto Networks, PanoSOS, VM Series, we're essentially the publishing service to put your software in our 16 regions around the world. The Marketplace is currently in 14.
Just making it really easy for our customers to consume our platform around the world.
In actual fact, our development of the onboarding portal for Marketplace is done here in Vancouver, Canada. And so your engineers at Palo Alto Network are standing up a new version of your product, we workflow it out, and then we publish it to the Canadian region, the new UK region, and as we publish that we're going to France, we'll publish Palo Alto Network into the French region.
Yeah, from our dev people, it really does feel like co-development.
There's a lot of collaboration. You've talked earlier about innovation, right? And people move to the cloud for innovation. And that means that we're all moving faster. And we've all been building software a long time.
Yeah.
And so the speed of what we're doing on code pipelines, continuous deployment, CI/CD, means that we're collaborating on what's an API that you may use from us. Your latest package is using Lambda,
yep.
right? It's using ELB. And you're versioning software that we're then putting up for your customers here to use.
Yeah, it was cool to see Dave at our public launch for our version 8.0. Dave got up on stage and said that 8.0 is running today on AWS. That was a cool thing to see. But maybe I think you came here calculating that there's approximately 2,100 AWS customers here in the room. Maybe you can talk for the other 1,400 people. Give us a sense for what that journey looks like for a typical AWS customer as they move into the cloud.
Yeah, the journey to cloud is very individual. So we all like to pattern analyze, whether it's at the security layer where we're trying to obviously analyze that pattern, or whether it's at the application and business level. But eventually, cloud is a driver for innovation first. And so every institution in this room has a customer, they have a taxpayer, if it's government, you have somebody whom you service, and you want to innovate faster. At the same time, you want to reduce cost, and you also want agility. So the drivers are unique to your institution, but the commonality means that you're going to pick a workload, and you're going to move workload at a time. And software, I got into software in '82. Every institution in this room has a portfolio of workloads or applications. And whether it is dev test, or a website, or a BI tool, or a storage application, analytics, you're going to move workloads at a time to the cloud when the economics and the innovation drive it.
Yep.
And so that pattern means that over time, more and more of your workloads are in the cloud. You still have a bunch on-prem. And so you've got this hybrid model. And it causes a lot of decisioning around network and security. How do you want to stand up your VPCs? And how do you want to make security policies in a hybrid world?
Yeah, which is why I think we have to work so close together to make sure that that journey for our common customers is a consistent one that allows people to enforce consistent policy.
It does, and there's a lot of advice the customer wants. They actually need advice from multiple parties. Yep. So you're going to take advice from Palo Alto Networks as your trusted security provider. You're going to take advice from AWS architects. You're also going to take advice from consulting partners that are common to both of us. And then the customer has to make that decision and then apply the policies and the approaches on some shared model.
Yeah, you bet. So here at Palo Alto Networks, we've been thought of as thought leaders in this network security space. We're working really hard to become thought leaders in public cloud. Maybe you can give us a sense for this shared responsibility model that AWS espouses.
Yeah, I mean, look, we stood up cloud first. We've become a leader in cloud. We're very fortunate that customers are adopting us at high speed. And we now have announced we have over 1 million customers. And as those customers move up on AWS, and everybody in this room, a high percentage of this room are AWS customers, you have decisions to make about who's responsible for what. And clearly we've said that we have a shared responsibility model where AWS will manage the compute, storage, and network layer up to the host. And then you're going to be standing up the guest. You're going to be standing up the software that runs in the guest. And then you're going to be creating the network topology, the security layers, the access layers, and ultimately the customer owns the data. And so in this shared responsibility model, the other thing we have to take in is we're innovating really fast. And last year we released over 1,000 features at AWS. So if you think of it, every day we're announcing a bunch of new features this morning in DC at the Public Sector Summit. And so we're releasing new features that your engineers, our engineers, and the customers in this room have to decide, how does it improve my customer experience? And it's very much a continuous flow of learning.
Yeah, we expect to be up and ready in GovCloud by the end of the summer.
Yeah, and we're very pleased this morning at DC at 8:15 this morning, Pacific time, we announced that we're going to be putting Marketplace into our GovCloud. It's one of our 16 regions. It meets a whole bunch of US government standards. And so Marketplace will be there by the end of the summer. And you're going to be one of the first vendors in Marketplace for US government customers.
Great. So this cloud clearly driving very fast pace of speed, innovation to the cloud. Maybe it seems like there's really confusing traditional ways of licensing with the new way of licensing in AWS. Maybe you can shed some light on that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You know, we can write the code, and you can be expert in how to use the code, but the methodologies for procuring software are kind of 30 years old. And so when we looked at the friction, one of the things that Amazon focuses on is making things easy. We have a leadership principle from Jeff Bezos that's called invent and simplify. It really means that we break down the use cases. We ask for what's causing the customer friction and how do we remove friction. And procurement or licensing is kind of old-fashioned. It was built for a server world where you buy one, you wait 18 months or 18 weeks, you stand it up and you install the code. If we can provision an EC2 instance in a minute, then how do we provision software? So we have to solve the licensing and metering. And the other thing is, in the old days, you bought software you never deployed. Whereas you're going to spin it up, run it, shut it down, spin it up, run it, shut it down. So we have to cause metering.
Yep.
We have to cause tagging and provisioning. And so really we're building a seamless provisioning service, and we work with you, and then you have to actually decide as a software vendor how to change your use of hours, months, years, and the dimension on which you want to license.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, many of you here in the room know we productized virtual machine versions of our solutions probably 4 years ago, where now every functionality that we deliver is available in software form factors. But one of the things we learned very quickly as customers started spinning up in both Azure and AWS was we needed a more flexible way to consume the Palo Alto Networks licenses. And so we created a VM ELA, and I know there's some VM ELA customers here in this room, but basically what we do is we sit down, we try to map out your journey, whether it's for 1 year or 3 years, and we come up with a pretty decent discount on that journey. But we give you the ability to spike up to infinity with no true-ups. So we've seen customers really accelerating adoption because of that flexibility. With one license key, they can take it to AWS, they can take it to VMware, NSX, Cisco ACI, God forbid, or Microsoft Azure.
So that's a really key thing, right? We talk about the cloud being elastic. So if the compute's elastic, and the network's elastic, and the storage is elastic, then the rights to software, which is entitlement has to be elastic. So we're actually publishing a set of APIs. So as you launch SaaS products, we actually just launched a new SaaS API in San Francisco called the Contract API. And essentially the ISV vendor sends us a bunch of JSON and establishes the contract terms, whether it's time, dimension of value, and duration. And so as we work together with you, your customers really want freedom of spinning up that resource in Korea, closing it down, moving that entitlement over here, transfer it to a Dublin deployment. There may be reasons for data compliance and security that you do things in different countries. So the customer needs flexibility. Yeah. And I think a lot of what we're doing together to benefit the customers in this audience are to essentially turn flexibility into code. And then that code has to be between a collaboration between an expert like Palo Alto Networks and ourselves so that you can provision and deploy and concentrate on how to apply policy and management. And so we take out some of that friction so you can go faster.
Well, terrific, man. I really, really appreciate the partnership, and I can't thank you enough for being here today, Dave. It's been a privilege.
Thank you for the privilege.
Cheers,
we really
man.
welcome the partnership.
All right. Thanks. Cheers. All right.